I'm Drew Breezy, and this is the Comm Center. We're going to use our collective credible experience to analyze a 911 call that resulted in an officer involved shooting in New Jersey during the upswing of the Defund the Police movement. What went wrong? What went right? Or is this just a case of political activism? You know, one of our mantras here at the Comm Center is to answer YouTube comments before they're even asked. But what if we answered them after? And so that no one can respond to what we say. John's going to introduce a new segment called Boil Drew's Blood, where John will read a comment and Drew will tearfully scream his response into an abyss. Remember, folks, it's an election year, so half of you will only hear half of what we say, and the other half will be censored. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
City council members have announced their plan to disband the Minneapolis Police Department.
We're calling for defunding the police.
Shootings in New York City have more than doubled this year.
I love that song. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy, the TV show on the internet about two best friends who sit around in the backyard eating ribs together, and neither one has a clue what the other one has in their houses. I'm John. I'm a 911 dispatcher for real, in real life. And so when I comment on YouTube things, my comments do double damage. I'm joined, as always, by Drew Breezy. That's his stage name. He used to be known as Andrew Baxter. He was a lieutenant in the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in sunny South Florida, which is one of the biggest and most prestigious agencies in sunny South Florida. Drew, how are you doing today?
We eat ribs with this dude, first of all. I just want to get that out of the way.
Is that song still stuck in your head? Because it's still in my head.
Dead giveaway, yeah. But please don't play it because we'll be censored again.
I know that video wreaked havoc across our channel last week, but it was sort of worth it. And I don't know how. I think there was someone in the chats who said that they had never seen that video, and I hadn't either. So it was nice to finally get caught up on what was going on YouTube 10 years ago. Someone else was like, "Damn, I remember when YouTube used to be really funny. What happened?" I'm like, yeah, YouTube is just white conservative guys just talking at the camera, giving their opinions. I say bring back the piano being played by a cat. That's when YouTube was at its height.
Cat Oregon. Sure. Yeah. I'm always receptive to those comments. I always apologize for all the free content we give them.
I know we shouldn't do that. Drew, what was your favorite old YouTube video at the height of it? At the height of like primordial YouTube when it was just for fun? You have any memories of that?
Man,
Chocolate Rain or anything?
What's that?
Chocolate Rain?
Oh, Chocolate Rain's a good one. Do I have a windscreen around here? I might even have one. Chocolate Rain was a good one. They got overplayed, obviously. And then, Tosh kind of popularized all these too. Like he was definitely onto something, like analyzing these YouTube videos. Daniel Tosh. I don't know, like I think the dead giveaway stuff, the schmo yo stuff, like because they took a bunch of political statements that were made, as long as it was like a viral video, they turned it into a more viral video by auto-tuning it. They're pretty funny. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a fave. Do you?
I do. I liked Chad Vader, Night Shift Manager. It was about Darth Vader's brother who worked at a grocery store. It was a whole series. It was actually really good. And then there were these animated shorts called Salad Fingers. If you're not aware of that, just go ahead and leave this channel immediately. Go check out Salad Fingers. It was like when people like me first started like making ourselves known to the public. It was sort of the original coming out. Anyway, YouTube used to be a lot more fun. I do have some announcements, Drew, that we need to make. First of all, I wanted to mention Mike Dutcher won my contest of leave a rating and review on iTunes. He was the only one who did it in the allotted time span. So I have created this mug for him using the power of Amazon and a computer. I have taken the classic Drew mug and placed it onto a mug. And then on the reverse side is me that I have signed with a Sharpie. As soon as I am getting through the constant parade of tragedy and hassle that is my life, I will get that sent out to Mike. Mike, there's going to be a slight delay because I'm having, I don't want to say problems at home because then it sounds like I have emotional or domestic issues. Like literally my water heater blew up. So like I'm just being delayed by life happening to me. But Mike, I promise you, I swear on the hammer of Thor that I will get that to you. Also, last week, Drew, on the after show, for those of you listening on the audio podcast, we have a YouTube live after show where I jump on after the show's over. The show airs Thursday at 8/7 Central. After it's over, no matter what time that is, so it's not a fixed time, I watch the live show. And when that's done, I initiate the after show. And when we get enough people on the show, I do the after show. But on the after show last week, I've made some ominous comments. Ominous comments, or ominous comment used to be my nickname in high school. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah, I am
but I
aware.
said, big changes coming to the Comm Center with Drew Parisi. You know, we've been doing it this way for 17 months, but sorry, gang, it's time for a change. And people are messaging like, "Oh my God, is Drew dying? Are you leaving the show?" And I'm just, and then I leave those people on red. You know, I don't address their concerns or.
It's wise. That's what I do.
But positive changes coming to Comm Center with Drew Breezy. You know, we haven't sorted it all out yet, but we've achieved a little bit of a milestone, and I guess it's time to say thanks to the commies, the communists who are following us. We've achieved the plateau status on YouTube, but where we can be monetized. And what does that mean? Well, some scary changes coming. Number one, you are going to pay hand over fist for this content now.
No
With
long-
for us to get our bread.
we got to get ours.
We got to get ours.
Yeah, that's our new motto.
We have been giving you free shit for months and months and months and months. Sometimes, you know, we're not making money. Sometimes other people are being given income for our effort. But now it is time for you and I to be paid. So nothing's really going to change for you in the audience unless you wanted to. We're going to be offering some membership options with some bonus content. Drew and I were thinking like we could do reaction videos to famous cop movies like Dewey, you know, our producer who's a consummate film nut. He dug up 79 films. That's not even a joke. 79 cop films that we could watch and react to. I was also thinking, I was when I was on vacation last week, Drew, I was in my hotel room like you. I go on vacation and then I don't take in the rich splendor of the world around me. I just do what
room. Yeah.
I just sit in the room and then I watch cable, and then 911 was on, and I didn't want to watch it, but I like couldn't change the channel. And I was so irritated by that show. Like at one point there's a 911 operator who's sitting there calmly taking a call from a guy who's on a plane that's crashing, and he's just like, "This call is being recorded, right?" She goes, "Yes." And goes, "Well, I want to say goodbye to my wife." And he has this like 3-minute long Emmy award winning thing about saying goodbye to his wife. And this dispatcher's just sitting there and absolutely calm behind her. I'm like, if I'm taking a 911 call about a plane crashing, I don't have fucking time to like take your last will and testament and be like, "I'm sorry you're on that plane. Goodbye. I have to dispatch a fire truck to figure out where your flaming corpse is going to be so we could spray a fog over it." That's what I have to do.
Yeah.
Anyway,
not to interrupt, but most likely you're going to try to determine jurisdiction anyway. So because they might be calling the wrong 911 center. So
oh, I know they're flying overhead.
You're just trying to
miles
come off the back. All right, go ahead.
I didn't mean to get off on a jag on how much I hate that show, but I mean, like, there's some fun YouTube stuff about, like, there's this one firefighter that reacts to this stuff that just constantly talks about how stupid and ridiculous the show is. I think that's something we could do, at least in the 911 aspect, but we could do that to movies too, and then we could just have that as like content that you can watch, extra bonus stuff. Drew just reading the newspaper and shouting the stuff that's in the newspaper. We'll find out, but we're going to bring you more content. And as I said, you will pay hand over fist for this, but it is worth it, right? If you want to invest to make your life better, you do that every day. You indulge in something, a nice, big, extra large, hot cup of coffee or whatever. Well, we're going to add some value, and I mean that sincerely. We're going to add some value to your day, and we're going to do that by becoming a premium content platform for you. Again, if you only like us a little bit, First of all, the feeling's mutual, but you don't have to. You don't have to become a subscriber. But if you love us a lot, then the feeling is mutual, and you can become a paid member here at the Comm Center. Drew, any comments on that? Anything that you want to let slip?
This is just like a way of kind of holding out the tip jar. Even Billy Joel put a glass jar on his piano. He says it right in Piano Man. So, we're just maybe looking for a little bread in our jar, and we're not going to get greedy about it. However, some of the ideas we have kicked around are like the wildly popular content is like the coffee break and the after show. So maybe that's going to go to the members. We want to provide value, whether you're just watching, listening, or you're actually coming to us to be entertained, which is it's an honor, to be honest with you. And it's quite obvious that you care about John and not me, because I'm not, I'm just some dolt. But look, we're not trying to get greedy here, and I can't sit on a platform of dispatchers are the lowest paid profession with the highest stress, and then charge you, $600 a month for our like self-fulfilling services. So I'm not trying to break anybody. We're just trying to
we need to pay Dewey, really is what it is. Like, look at this podcast. Look at how it's changed, since we launched over a year ago. Like, we've come a long way. We've increased our professionalism. We do this to add more value to what you're getting from us. Right now, it's not just two guys who are like hoping that the microphone works when we turn on the internet. We're here to bring value to your day. We're here talking about a wider variety of subjects, but most importantly, what you want you to take away from it is we're not going to hold out on you. Being a member is going to have certain benefits for you, early access to things, but you're not going to be a casual viewer of Comm Center with Drew Breezy and feel like all of a sudden you're on the outs or you're missing something. We're just going to make it better stuff for the people who are most invested in us. So we appreciate you guys, and anyone who's already interested in that sort of thing. Anyone that's stuck with us so far, share it with a friend. I mean, we're only growing because of you, and this is a way in which we can help ourselves and help you to do better. We're just more of everything is all that's happening.
All we strive to provide is experience, expertise, which we have plenty of both. Some authoritativeness, like we know what we're talking about, and that we're trustworthy. Like if we make a mistake, we're going to talk about making a mistake, or if the profession made a mistake, we're going to talk about that too. I mean, and we could do it in a lighthearted way. So that's all we're looking to provide to you. Hopefully you'll get some value out of it. And if you don't, at least you'll get some entertainment out of it. And, listen, we understand. Either way, we'd love to have you here. We love the interaction. So please drop a comment here on YouTube if you're watching, and if you're listening. I don't know if you know this or not, but you can actually comment on some of these things on Spotify. You can, there are polls that you can interact with. There are questions that can be answered. So, take a look at that also. What I'm really digging, John, is that Apple Podcast now provides a transcript. They transcript all of the stuff that we upload. It's great. I don't know if you've ever seen it. So you can basically follow along with us, and we count as reading a book. So every episode we provide, you have read a book. So we are selling you books.
If you are in some sort of adult book it program where you must read a certain number of books in a marking period or a semester, to get a free personal pan pizza, maximum value $4.99. This counts for that. So you just go ahead and print out the transcript, take it to your teacher. She'll sign off on it.
Yeah, you sign it if you know how to write. And then and also for community service hours, if you're on probation or something like that and you have to read certain books, then you can bring this to your probation officer.
Other ways you can contact us, you can leave us a voicemail, 848-COMM-911. That's 848-266-6911. You can leave us a voicemail, particularly if it's germane to the comment germane to the content of the show. So if you have something to say, whether it's in response to Amanda Neniger or whatever the show was last week that I really can't even remember it all. It was a good one, but I don't remember it, Drew. Also, leave a comment below. Like, we're at the end of this episode, we're going to take on the YouTube comments of some other things. we would love to take you on. Leave a comment below. It doesn't matter how smart or how stupid it is, as long as it drives the algorithm, just keep it going. Rumble may have some sort of comments function. I'm not aware.
They do.
Go over there and follow us on Rumble if that's your thing. And of course, on Instagram, you can reach out to us at the Comm Center, where we will leave you on red because each of us thinks that the other one is responding to your messages.
Yes.
At least your message will get through. If you wanted to talk to us more directly, you can reach Drew at What Say Drew. And if you had the audacity to reach out to me for some reason, you could do so at Difficult to Look At Pictures. We're also on X. Not a good way to reach me, honestly, to leave a message. It's just another place that we broadcast, try to bring attention to the show. Just letting you know that you could send DMs a different way and you would be better. The Facebook group, the Comm Center, is an excellent way to interact with your fellow communists and with me. Drew is constantly posting things on there all the time. I know this because for whatever reason, it is also attached to my personal Facebook account. And so I will receive notifications every time Drew does anything. So, which is great. And so if you love the Comm Center that much to where you want to constantly know every little thing that Drew's doing, you could do that. Drew, I have a full case to bring you. I love it when you do the cases. You do an excellent job.
Thank you.
But this one is going to be interesting. It's dense. Lots to
Hold on a second. I love it when you do this, but this one is going to be interesting. Okay, go ahead.
Well, let's just face it. I bring something a little extra to the game. Like my production value is I won't say it's better, but it's definitely
it's better.
It's a lot. It's if I can't do quantity, if I can't do quality, I'm definitely doing quantity. Anyway, you'll get it as we get through it. But I'm going to talk about this case a little before we get started. So we're going to go completely into left field. And for the first time ever, we're going to talk about a 911 call, and we're going to show body cam footage afterwards. And we're going to talk about what went wrong on this case, what went right, so that we understand the gravity of what we're talking about. A human being was wiped out, cast off of the face of the earth. So that's the consequences that we're talking about. And now what hangs in the balance? The careers of all of those involved, police officers, 911 dispatchers, the careers of possibly attorneys involved, concerns about the family, the community, and the role of police. As Drew said, this case happened in September of 2021, so right at the upswing of the Defund the Police movement. Think about it. This is right around the time when like Mike the Cop is starting a podcast and things like this, so that people like you and me can be assuaged of our angry blood over the way that Joe Biden's America is going. But we'll start now with a 911 phone call taken from Mantua Township in New Jersey. There's a lot to break down, so I'm going to try to let it go as long as I can without stopping it. Drew, of course, you speak up at any time. You are a dispatcher and a former dispatch communications center supervisor, so you have lots to say on it, particularly in terms of where any administrative problems have gone. You've done a lot of quality assurance and 911 calls. So I'm going to view it through the lens of someone that does this every day. I'm going to be looking at this call taker and this dispatcher as a peer, and Drew will look at him as a supervisor. And then we're going to go to some straight up cop shit, where Drew is going to give you the benefit of his 29 years of law enforcement. He's going to break it all down for you. And you know what? I bet we're going to get to the end of this, and not only will Drew and I disagree, but you will disagree with Drew as well, and you will possibly shoot the TV like Elvis. I don't know. We're going to see what happens, but let's go ahead and play the 911 audio.
911, where's your emergency?
Two intruders in the back of my yard.
What town's it in?
Mantua.
Mantua? Are you off Elm Avenue?
Yeah. One of them had a gun for sure.
Okay. And your phone number's, how many were
threw a firecracker away from to get them to go, but they keep coming back, like looking to the fence.
Okay, hold on for the police. I'm going to transfer you.
Police communications.
911 transfer on Elm Avenue in Mantua. Phone number. Caller reported intruders on the property, and he believes one of them had a gun.
Hello?
One of them definitely had a gun. I saw him.
What's your address?
So a couple things have already happened. Someone's dialed 911. The first dispatcher has confirmed their general address, but not a specific address. He just knows that it's not his baby. He knows that this belongs to somebody else.
Get it off
The
your
ball's
back.
been snapped to him, and he is punting that to the other team over on the other side of Elm Street, over in Mantua Township. And you can hear both times the 911 callers come on. The most important thing to him is telling the story of possibly trespassers or prowlers on his property. I would call this a prowling call. But it's two unwanted people. And as usual, we're having to put the brakes on the person expressing their emotions and venting, the story of what's going on to try to get basics. So we've got to confirm the address. We know that we possibly have two armed people. We have no idea where they are yet. We have a general idea. As this call comes in, it is being mapped by, various functions, whether it's Rapid OSOS or ANI data from the phone. But we always want to confirm that with a human being there that's giving us that human intelligence. Usually you can count on people to know their address. I say usually, but more often than not, in emergencies, some of the first things to go are someone's sense of orientation. Luckily, This guy's at home, and so he has a good idea where he is. And this caller's very calm. Drew, any initial thoughts before I go on?
No. I mean, it's all like this could happen on any given night at any given 911 center, obviously.
Drew, what do you think so far of the guy saying that he was using firecrackers to scare off these prowlers?
Well, unless they were crows, I don't know that would be an effective tool anyway. But
I know.
Whatever. I mean, and I don't know the legalities of using fireworks in New Jersey.
Now, you touched on something very interesting there, and we should put a pin in that and circle back to it later. But you make a good point. I don't know if you guys remember the domestic call that we handled in Wisconsin where the guy throws open this door, and this is not a haunted hayride. If I was a burglar on this man's property, I would advise him it's not the 4th of July. It's not Chinese New Year, and to put the fireworks away. And just a pro tip, here's a professional tip to anyone who sees a burglar, a prowler, or a trespasser on your property. Do not confront them. Do not throw fireworks at them. Neither one of these is a good idea. Dialing 911 before you do anything else is always a good idea. And we're going to find out that is not what has taken place so far. Drew, I will continue with your permission.
Yeah, just one last thing to add. We've said it on this show before. Just in our experience, it's always the person with the fake gun that ends up getting shot and killed. Go ahead.
Drew, I love that you are already ruining this episode.
Well, no. I'm saying fake gun because when you're throwing fireworks, you're trying to scare somebody off thinking that it's like 22 round or something to that effect. And if somebody has an actual gun, they may fire back. So it's always the person with the fake implement that ends up getting killed. Just remember that.
It is. But don't, we may have to circle back to that later, Drew. I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
257 Elm.
57 Elm Avenue?
257.
257?
Yeah. I mean, I came out and I lit off a quarter stick to scare them away, but they came back.
Okay. How many people were there?
Two.
You're on Elm, not West Elm, right?
Not one Elm.
Okay. How many were there? You said two?
Two. That I saw, and then as I came back, there was a woman. And
you got a description of the individuals?
I'm gonna say the one guy, he looked like to me maybe in his mid-60s.
You got white males, black males, Hispanic males?
White, long, like thinning hair. The other guy was a black guy.
So one white male, one black male?
Yeah, and the other girl, I really couldn't get a look. She was behind the fence.
What were they doing?
Well, when I looked out my window, the one guy was in my shed, getting my shed door open. And then I came around to go outside to confront him.
So, Drew, a couple of things here. So this guy was inside. He saw some people prowling around on the property, gaining access to an outbuilding. At this point, we've got a burglary in progress, right? They're breaking and entering. Yes. They're going into an outbuilding. So we would call this a felony in progress or just occurred.
Yes.
Very, very important call. We already had at the top of the call saying that the subjects were armed. So this could be an armed burglary. So what we're talking about is one of the most dangerous situations that a homeowner can face. Two people on the property with firearms. He goes outside to confront them, which he is within his rights to do as a citizen. But again, I just wanted to say to those casually listening, not necessarily the best idea. You will see these plaques at gas stations that say, "In my house, we don't call 911," and it has some sort of picture of a gun on it or something. That's
We
good.
357.
Just make sure that you also get the T-shirt next to it that says, "I have a lawyer on retainer," because that is something that you will also need. I'm very pro Second Amendment. I'm very pro self-defense, and it's particularly, and I live in a place where there's not an abundance of law enforcement, and I understand the need to defend yourself. However, in Mantua, New Jersey, it may be the case that you might be able to hold off in a situation in which the only thing that's being threatened is your property. This guy's life is not in danger. He doesn't seem very worked up. He wasn't too afraid to go outside and confront them. Admittedly, he might not have known about the guns until the confrontation. But if your personal safety is not at risk, maybe this is something that you can call the police for and have them respond. You do pay taxes as a citizen to have police come out and deal with these things. This way, if they take off, run, you can have a coordinated response from multiple units, and you can just sit on your couch. You don't really have to be especially bothered by this. But this guy is a proactive citizen, takes the situation to his own hands, and goes outside and confronts them. Drew, any comments on his behavior so far?
No, I did notice he talked about a quarter stick, excuse me, which is more than just a firecracker. That's what's
Dynamite.
common on the street. Yeah, on the street, known as an M80. So that sounds more like a flashbang than it does anything else. It would sound like a shotgun blast, if anything. But you're right also in that it's specifically an outbuilding they're breaking into. There's no human lives that are in danger. It's all property that yeah. In most states, probably 99% of the states, it's going to be a felony crime. But there's no like real danger to human beings at this point. And this is New Jersey, so they could be bears.
Something else to remember, or the Jersey Devil, Drew. Something else to remember too is that there is such a thing as castle doctrine. We've talked about this before. What is your curtilage? Does a lanai count? A lanai is at least attached to your building. It may have a pool in it. I don't remember what a lanai is, I guess. But this thing's a shed. It's not connected. It's not part of the dwelling. I don't really want to break down the whole Fourth Amendment thing, but I guess in terms of your expectation of privacy, you might have a diminished expectation out there, but you may also have a diminished expectation to use force to protect it. I don't think that's going to come into it, but I just want everyone to keep common sense in mind when you're confronting a subject and when you should do that. Make them come to you, I guess, is my only advice. If they come to you, that's when you should escalate use of force. If they're just outside, if they're just in an outbuilding, that's a great time to be a good witness, as long as you can do so safely. Gather as much as intelligence as possible. Give it to the dispatcher, who's going to give that to the radio, and the police are going to know exactly what's coming in from you as fast as humanly possible as units are approaching. As Drew said, this is a burglary in progress. This is a high priority call. Units are already probably on the way as the dispatcher starts building the case in the CAD for other units to see. So I'm going to continue it, Drew, with your permission.
Go for it.
And there was a guy fucking in my truck trying to get it open.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Or where are they at now?
It almost looked like somebody's in my truck.
Okay. Mantua, Cars County. 257 Elm Avenue. 257 Elm Avenue. 911 phone call. Cars advising 2 subjects on his property. One male was trying to get into his shed. One male possibly in his truck now. He advised that one may have
I'm getting ready to go in the house, dude. I don't know if these guys... I mean, I have something my grandfather passed down to me. I don't know how legal it is.
Okay.
In a will.
And what's your name?
Charles Sharp.
Charles Sharp.
What did we just miss, Drew?
Well, I think that he was saying that, he has a gun, but he didn't say he had a gun, first of all. And second of all, that was just an odd way of presenting the fact.
It was very, very, very roundabout. So the dispatcher's trying to gather information from him. You can hear him say, like, what's your name? He's going to be gathering his name, putting in the address, associating those records at CAD, probably putting in the phone number that he's got on this 911 transfer. It just kind of starting to build out the basic biographical information in the case. This guy has already engaged in story time a couple of times, saying, hey, I was inside my house and I was having a piece of toast and I looked out the window and I saw these guys and I went outside and I had this confrontation, which, by the way, subsequently ended with me going back inside and there's still a guy in my truck. So he went out and confronted these guys, threw firecrackers at them, or M80s. They weren't impressed. They kept coming back. I guess he went back inside. Is the caller inside or outside at this point? We're not sure. But now this guy starts talking about how, my grandfather willed me an old 45 back in the war, and
Yeah.
he brought it home from him from over in Germany, and it come down through the generations, and he gave it to me in a will, and now I got it in my hand. And the dispatcher hears this casual story of the provenance of an antique, I guess, and a critical question was missed. Now, this is something that I have missed before. This is something that I am teaching my new dispatchers to do. But anytime where you're dealing with a confrontation of burglars or people on the property, someone dialing 911 for a situation like this, it's always good to ask your caller, are you armed? Not so that you can tell them to disarm themselves necessarily, but the police need to have some idea of the players involved and what's at stake. So if the caller has a gun in his hand because he wants to defend himself or in his property, that's fine. Something that is very helpful, and I've said this on other shows, that as the police approach the scene, they're looking for bad guys with guns. We've said that the subjects are armed as they pull up. We have a general description: a white male in his 60s with long thinning hair, and a black guy, and possibly a woman, description unknown, also in the vicinity. We believe that one or both of them, or two of these people, may be armed. So we're going to be looking for someone outside the house with a gun. So that really ratchets up the stress and the tension and the danger in the situation. And so what you would want to do is you would want to be telling your 911 caller, hey, make sure that weapon's not in your hand when police come on the scene. You want to be giving your caller updates saying, hey, the police will be there. They're coming right around the corner. They'll be there soon. Be inside, secure your residence. These are all pieces of advice you can give them. Drew, I'll take your take on when to give advice, when not to give advice. When are you at fault for giving too much advice? When are you at fault for not giving enough? But so far in this call, the dispatcher has missed that the caller is armed. We've missed where he is. Is he inside or is he outside? And having missed these things is going to prove very drastic. Drew, any other thoughts on anything I've mentioned so far?
Yeah, he missed the dispatcher missed it because we're listening for it. In other words, in all these cases where I always say, look, this is not a crutch to fall back on. Hindsight is 2020. Graham versus Connor is very specific, that says you have to take the incident in light of all of the what a reasonable officer would do in all of the circumstances that were, upon that officer in the moment. And it's the same with the dispatcher here. I mean, I don't think there's any bright line Supreme Court case that talks about dispatchers, but think about, he's trying to get all this information, and he's also radio dispatching, like I know that you're familiar with doing, which, it was kind of rare where I worked, but we did it. Very, very rare. The voice or radio dispatcher was focused on what was happening on the radio, and the person, that was assisting them was focused on what was happening on the phone, and they would try to relay the information back and forth. When you're trying to do both, your attention is divided. Therefore, you're talking to the cops and you're thinking about what you're trying to tell the cops, and this guy's in your left ear telling you very important things like, hey, my grandfather passed this down to me, and all these other things, and it's not even you're not even processing probably half of what he's saying. It's almost like a do what now? Anyway, you know what I mean? So continue, because obviously we need to hear the rest of it, but just keep that in mind. We're listening to this in hindsight.
We are, and that's an important thing to say. In dispatch world, what we have is a thing called split ear, where we try to listen to two things at the same time and process them both. And really good dispatchers are actually capable of doing that. I have been able to do amazing things where I'm hearing the most important parts of two people's conversation and somehow come out with both of those things. But it's very, very difficult. And something to note was, at one point, the dispatcher call taker goes into dispatch phase where he's talking on the radio. The 911 caller is continuing to talk to him while he's doing that, to the point where he has to stop his dispatch because the guy's talking to him. Generally, what I want to do is tell the caller, hey, can you hold on one second? I'm going to update the police. As we dealt with Amanda Nediger, we talked about how he said, okay, hold on a second. And she started telling him even more critical information as he was talking to the police. I would try to put it on mute though, so that they would not necessarily hear that, particularly if I had something to say like, oh, my caller is completely intoxicated. Anything like that you wouldn't want your caller to hear, I would put it on mute for. But we'll continue on, Drew. Just noting for the listeners of the podcast that this guy was told a story about how the reporting party has a firearm. He's not sure how legal it is or what he's allowed to do with it. It almost seems like he's casually broaching the subject to say, I've got a gun. Almost like he wants advice from the dispatcher on how to do it, which is also something that's very common, that people want to treat 911 dispatchers like lawyers. Like, oh, I happen to know exactly how you should handle yourself in this situation so that you are legally covered, which is outside the scope of our duties. I'll go on, Drew.
Yeah.
Phone number?
There's a guy in my truck. There you go.
Did you?
Okay, what you probably didn't hear, podcast listener, because this was in the background and I had to crank this up and put both hands over my ears, but the police officer's in the background on this phone call, and he says, I've got a short ETA, meaning he will be on scene very quickly. And he goes, can you tell me why the caller believes that the subjects are armed? So it's like, we really, really need to know if these guys outside have a gun. We've been told so. We've been told that so far. We're obviously going to use caution anyway for a burglary in progress, but we want to know what's the information. Can you confirm this so that the officers have some confidence going in that situation? Drew, responding to a burglary in progress, what went through your mind knowing the subjects were armed? What would you think if you had some doubt about whether or not they were armed? Would that change your approach to the burglary in progress?
It wouldn't change the approach. I mean, I'm still trying to get there, and I've said this a million times before. You're driving at warp speed, and you're trying to pay attention to the radio, and you're also trying to pay attention to the CAD notes that are updating on that little tiny computer screen while you keep your car on the 12 feet of pavement that you're supposed to keep it on. The one thing I haven't heard, and again, this is hindsight from the dispatcher, and probably I would ask as a cop or as a shift commander or whatever, does he know these people? Do you know who they are? I mean, like, are these your neighbors that you have a problem with, or is this, because it's not going to change the response. It's certainly going to change the tone. If these are complete strangers, then maybe we're going to step it up just a little bit, but fully, it'll definitely get your adrenaline coursing when you know that somebody is in a truck that doesn't belong to them and you're trying to get there, especially if they're armed. I mean,
I think that's a great point. This is a very strange situation, all things considered. This guy saw two people outside. He confronted them, threw firecrackers at them. They didn't leave. One of them still inside his truck. How do you approach a situation in which two people are on your property and then you confront them? I don't know exactly how that went down because he never says, but then ultimately you walk away from that confrontation with someone still in your vehicle. I'm not inclined to necessarily go out and confront somebody who is inside my vehicle, depending on the situation. If there's a gun in the car or something, I might want to get to him before he can get to that, depending on what's going on. But very often, people do know the suspects in the case. They do know more than they're letting on. Very often, people do call 911 to tattle on people that they don't like, whether it's the mother of their child or their neighbor or what have you. And sometimes people call 911 out of revenge and things like that. And those things can add much needed context to a situation that may be missing. I don't know if it comes up or not later in this case or not that he knew them, Drew. But that is an interesting point and something that does come up a lot. Now the dispatcher is going to attempt to confirm the presence of the firearm. Basically, how do you know that they're armed? Which is a valuable question. I'm going to go ahead and play it with your permission, Drew.
Go for it.
See the weapon?
I mean, it was silver. The moonlight came off of it, and I knew it. I don't know what type it was, but it was a handgun.
Okay. Did you see it though?
Yes, sir.
Caller said he tried to make contact with the individuals and installed a handgun.
So then I went back in the house. Like I said, my grandfather willed me a 45. I don't know what I'm allowed to do or do without that. So I threw a couple quarter sticks at him. Maybe that's not the professional thing to do, but.
So Drew, he's sitting here telling the story about how he has this 45. He doesn't know what he's allowed to do with it. If I might get on a bit of a jag, this is New Jersey for you. This is a state where people literally cannot pump their own gas. It's illegal to pump your own gas in New Jersey. And because of rampant gun control laws, a person can own a firearm and they have no idea what they're allowed to do with it, to the point where they're doing something else that's kind of silly and stupid and dangerous, throwing firecrackers at somebody. We've taken a situation where someone might use a firearm. They might become proficient in it. They might come to get to know the laws that govern them in that state, when they can use a firearm, when they can't. And now, because we have laws that make people feel unsure about firearms, they're calling 911 to say, "I've got this gun that I came to me legally. You know, it may or may not be registered. I'm not sure how legal it is. I'm not sure what I'm allowed to do with that." And he's kind of just tiptoeing it out there. And the dispatcher's like, "I definitely don't want to talk to you about what you can do with that firearm," because the dispatcher does not want to go on record to say, well, you're totally good blowing these guys to hell who are out on your front yard or whatever, because first of all, it's not the case. But second of all, you're really hanging a big deal of liability on you anytime you give anyone any kind of legal advice about anything. That's something that people call us for all the time. They just, in my case, it's not always about firearms because I live in a constitutional carry state. So people want to know, like, hey, I got a bunch of raccoons being born in my boat. What do I do with it? Like, that's what they ask me. It's less complicated. Even still, I typically don't give them advice on that sort of thing. But here in New Jersey, where they're not even allowed to pump gas, you have a man who's in possession of a firearm, doesn't feel confident using it within the scope of the law, and who knows if he even knows how to use it in terms of mechanical operation. And he's throwing firecrackers at people. Drew?
I could hear radio chatter in the background. So I guess my take or my question or my assessment is that who do you want to listen to more in this situation? The professionals that have guns that are about to confront people with guns, or this guy who's talking to you in the background and it's not registering in your head yet that he's talking about he has his own gun. He's talking about how I don't know if that's necessarily a professional thing to do, or I think maybe a quick check-in like, sir, the officers are pretty close. Just do me a favor and stay in your house and keep an eye on them. Maybe that would be reassuring to him, to the caller. It might even be it might settle things down a little bit, and you could still get the same information that you need to relay to the officers. But again, this is all hindsight. I don't know where it goes from here, but I do think it's very important to listen to what the officers are saying, because you're responsible for their safety too. So you want to make sure that you relay all of the information that you can, because there's a real life confrontation that's about to take place from somebody with a gun that is alleged to have a gun, and somebody who definitely has a gun and is trained to use it.
I believe if Dominique were here, she would say that this caller needs to ask the man directly, "Are you armed? Do you have a gun in your hand?" So often we'll say our weapons involved, and then we have to really parse it down to, okay, do you actually have a weapon in your hand? If you do have that in your hand, make sure it's not in your hand when the police approach. Follow all directions from police. The police are going to be giving you verbal commands. Make sure the gun's not in your hand. Go back inside. Depending on the situation, these are all good ideas. These are all things that I've employed to avoid this exact style of confrontation. I'm not saying I'm a better dispatcher necessarily than this person, but Drew, I wonder, what is the affirmative obligation of a dispatcher in a legal sense and in terms of his own liability to give that kind of direction? We give pre-arrival instructions on medical calls, ways to give people first aid and treatment to preserve their life, their safety, until first responders can get there. Do we have an affirmative obligation to tell someone to go back inside their house, and not necessarily to disarm themselves, but more generally speaking, if we don't give someone advice and it leads to a very, very bad outcome, do you think that we're liable simply through inaction?
No, the inaction, I think that to hold up in any kind of court, and I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, telling them to do something is actionable. Telling them to put their gun down, telling them to go inside or whatever, and then something bad happens. Well, now that's actionable because they trusted us and they did what we told them to do. We specifically gave them instruction, versus not telling them anything other than to protect our own officer, like just letting things rest where they may, or maybe just kind of reassuring them like, hey, the police are almost there, which is a little nudge like, hey, you need to just chill out. Like, I don't know that anybody can really sue on inaction. So, other than maybe the person that I don't know, it's very difficult. I was going to say, other than maybe the person that's in the truck that ends up getting shot by the homeowner, or I don't know how this turns out.
You are
I
being set up. I mean, you're right. I'm asking you questions about a situation that you don't have enough information on. I just was
Yeah.
curious what you thought about just the affirmative obligation.
I've said I've talked about this before. I'm not a fan of telling people, like, I'm not a big gun guy for being a cop. I'll be real honest with you. I do understand the Second Amendment also, and I think as law enforcement or as an agency, through the 911 system, telling somebody to put their gun away or put it in a closet somewhere or whatever, giving that direction, you've taken their ability to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And I do understand. I was the guy responding, right? Or I was responsible for the people responding, even. So I do understand where the dispatcher's head is in saying like, hey, put that thing away, put it back in the safe or whatever. And a lot of officers will do that. They'll get on the radio and say, tell them to put their guns away before they even get there. But you're directing someone to take away their only means of protection before anybody is there to protect them.
Yeah.
It's a different story when you say, I am here now, or the canine's here, or we've got an eye on them, or something to that effect. Like, it's under our command now. It's under our control now. So you can put that away because we don't want to get caught in any kind of crossfire. I think those are two different things. And I think telling somebody to put their protection away is a very, very dangerous thing to say or do. And I'm always going to teeter on the side of the officer's safety, but the officer doesn't always take this into account. So when they're 6 miles away and they tell them, hey, put the gun away, I'm almost there, I think it's a bad idea. It's a bad decision.
The most ideal thing you could do is take what time you have and explain the situation in its entirety to the caller so they can make their own decision. We do have some dead air here. In a perfect world, the dispatcher would have said this. Okay, sir, the police are very close. What's going to happen is when they arrive on scene, they're going to be checking the outside of your property for these 3 people. They do believe that they have guns, so the police officers are going to be armed. The police officers have guns in their hands. We want you to be safe as well. This is very confusing. The best thing that you could do would be inside, out of sight, so that they don't confuse you with the suspects and that the police do not see anything in your hand. That would be a dangerous situation. So again, that takes a little bit of time to explain. And if this guy's not really listening, and if this guy's the kind of guy that's walking around outside and confronting people in his truck, he may not listen to you anyway, but at least you've taken the time to explain to the situation and maybe diffused some of that tension, or made someone understand that, hey, when the cops get there, they don't recognize you as the caller, and they might recognize you as the burglar. So unless there's anything else, Drew, I'll continue.
No, go ahead.
Here's that downtime. We could have used that.
Are you talking with my officers? Sir.
All right.
Yeah.
What you missed if you were just listening, the 911 dispatcher has the phone line open. We can hear nothing happening. And then all of a sudden you hear in the background, a police officer says, put the gun down. Now, this is very, very critical for everything that follows. So pay close attention to this. But between the end of his sentence, from when he said, put the gun down, I timed it out. It's almost 14 seconds between when he says, put the gun down, the sentence is concluded. The person who's hearing those words can comprehend what's happening and make a decision. Almost 14 seconds goes by, but a solid 13 seconds. So we need to understand that a verbal command was given to put down the gun, and at least 13 seconds transpired. Drew, we have been covering many, many, many officer-involved shootings where someone involved in a shooting was not given nearly that amount of time, not nearly 13 seconds, to choose whether to live or die. We talked about Tamir Rice. He had the gun in his hand. The kid who was walking down the street in Akron with a fake firearm a couple weeks ago, the police officer rolled up, saw the gun in his hand, decided to discharge his firearm at him. In comparison with many or most of these cases, 13 seconds is a great deal of time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if this said it at the beginning, but is this in daytime or nighttime?
This is nighttime, I believe. You're about to see body cam footage.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I guess you have a little advantage by cover of darkness, but at the same time, you know, you're illuminating the person, you know, with your light. Hopefully, you're illuminating the person with the gun. But yeah, I would definitely agree with you that 13 seconds is quite a gap. It's a lot of opportunity to have somebody lay their gun down.
Let's also just go on record to say we all heard that he said, put your gun down. It was clearly audible in the background. The dispatcher said, hey, are you talking to my officers? Something that's interesting to me as a dispatcher is police officers are on scene, and he's asking the caller if he's talking to the officers. This could be that the dispatcher is trying to just figure out who's interacting with whom. But I wonder if the dispatcher knows that the officers are on scene. Sometimes officers can go into a situation very hot, and they could forget to say something pretty critical, which is 1097 or on scene. Good deputies or officers will say that just prior to their arrival because they know the timing of everything getting logged and recorded and acknowledged, and that will be the time that they are there. But something that can add a layer of confusion is, are the police officers there or not? Sometimes an AVL will have a lag on it, or it won't exactly update, or it won't show a dispatcher if a unit is around a corner or not. And so sometimes it's hard to tell just by that if someone is on scene. And absent a unit arriving on scene with his gun out and saying 1097, a dispatcher may not know, and there could be a layer of confusion. It doesn't mean that it's going to change anything the dispatcher does at this point, but I just have to wonder, does the dispatcher, does the comm center know that they're on scene? Really just throwing it out there for no reason at all. But Drew, what are your comments?
The AVL tells you when the car is there. It doesn't tell you when the cop is there. The cop could be sitting in the car looking at his CAD notes. So when somebody's yelling, put your gun down, it could be the bad guy yelling, put your gun down. It could be the homeowner telling the bad guy to put the gun down. It could be the cop telling the homeowner to put the gun down. It could be the cop telling, like, there's no telling what's happening. So the dispatcher is in the right saying, hey, are you talking to the cop there? Are you talking to my officer? Like, he's trying to figure out what's going on here because he can obviously hear in the background. But the AVL that you'd refer to, like the GPS on the officer's car, that tracks where the officer's car is. It doesn't necessarily track where the officer.
What's going to happen next is we're going to hear the termination of the phone call. There's not a lot of intelligence to gather after this, but I want you to just listen, audience, to what the 911 dispatcher is hearing, understanding that his police officers are there, that his caller is there. It's his job to care for everyone involved, even the suspects to a certain degree. We don't want anyone to be shot. The preservation of all life is always our goal, is upholding the law. But I want you to understand what the 911 dispatcher's got to hear. This is part of his shift. This is part of our life. So we'll play it for you for just academic purposes of understanding what our job is. And then we're going to look at some body cam footage. It's going to be pretty hectic, Drew. I'm going to give you a chance to see it just play out in real time, and then we're going to break it down Zapruder style, okay?
Okay, good.
Yo. Yeah. I copy.
What you're hearing is probably a lot of the F word being bleeped out.
I copy. I'm going to start a BL.
Where at? Where? Right there. Put the gun.
68 helmet.
County shots fired.
I got it.
Put your arms out. Don't reach.
We're still half there.
County, notify Cooper, male shot, point a handgun.
I got it. Everybody else.
Now, Drew, I'm going to go ahead and just anticipate your point of view in that you don't have enough to say or think anything based off of that angle.
I don't know. The interaction he's having with whomever he's having the interaction with, he's saying where, like, and the other person saying he's got a handgun right there. So no, he doesn't have a whole lot of time to react.
I'm going to go ahead and let the other shoe drop. There's a lot that you're missing here.
Okay.
First of all, what we're looking at is the body worn camera of a second officer on scene. This is not the officer that discharged the firearm. And something that's very interesting is that we don't at any point in this presentation see the body worn camera footage of the officer who actually performed the shooting, which, Drew, I'm sure you'll agree, is somewhat unusual. Why are we only seeing the body cam footage of the second officer on scene who rolls up and then gets out of the car? And as we see, some sort of interaction is happening with the first officer and the person on the ground, and then a large number of shots are fired. The body cam footage that we just saw, which was released to the public, I will venture to say, Drew, is highly inflammatory. We get the officer rolling out of the car, and all of a sudden, this person who's wearing red is down on the ground. Now, Drew, this person in red is the homeowner. He is the 911 caller, and he has just been shot by the officers arriving on scene. So there's very little that you can make out of that, but I'm going to continue to break down something and make an excellent point here in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and let the body cam footage roll out so that we can see officers responding. I want you to pay close attention to some of the things that they're saying, because that's going to be important for the YouTube comments portion of this, but also just them performing first aid, getting a response going, some of the police tactics and other things involved. And just bear with me on all the expletives being bleeped out. Obviously, these officers are having one of the worst days of their lives.
Watch, he's got a gun on him. He's got a gun on him.
Gun on him, point at us. Right there. Start EMT, start EMS. Use my gloves. Cal.
Yeah, I got it.
We need ALS ASAP. Where is she?
I don't know. The guy came out, pointed a gun. Pointed the gun. I thought he was gonna fucking shoot me, dude.
Drew, something different that we're seeing this time than we've seen on previous occasions is that they're not taking any steps to arrest him. They're not turning him over, placing him in handcuffs. What would be the reason for that you think? Just difference in departmental policy?
No. I think a lot of the times that person is handcuffed is to do the pat down or to do the search to find if there are any other weapons or whatever. They recovered a weapon off of him. I don't know. Maybe it's just procedural, or maybe it's just not. Maybe their head's not in that space. But and I can't really tell by looking at the screen, but I think he might be in shorts. So there may not be a whole lot of clothing on him. Like they're able to kind of visually see that he doesn't have anything else on him, but they also kind of know, man, he's definitely incapacitated here, and we're in rescue mode at this point. This would be the point where they would take the handcuffs off anyway. So I saw the one officer kind of kicking either a gun or a magazine out of the way.
Yeah.
I think that they have everything secure.
Something interesting also is that if we know we have a white male in his 60s with long thinning hair, it doesn't necessarily match the description of our suspect and sight unseen or any other suspects in the area. So we're definitely concerned most with this guy, but I'll let it continue to play.
Yeah, here's the call.
Get his shirt off.
There's going to be Charles Trump was my original caller, the owner of the residence. County, can you give me some more units out here? I'm going to need a perimeter on Elm. Where is she?
Pull his shirt off.
Yeah, copy. Okay.
I don't have a knife on me.
Sorry.
Yeah, and call the caller back.
All right. So unfortunately, the subject, the homeowner, the 911 caller, was transported from the scene where he was pronounced deceased. So an unfortunate situation here where police were responding to a house, to a 911 caller. And unfortunately, they shot the 911 caller and he was killed. I think it's very, very important that we remember that we were hearing on the 911 call, we heard the sound of a command being given to drop a firearm. And as I said, we had almost 14 seconds between when that command was given from when the last syllable of that sentence was given and when the first shot was fired. We know that that time frame is there. So something that's very interesting is that you can reverse engineer that. If you take that same 13 plus seconds and apply it to the body cam footage that we're watching, we realize something very important. This body cam footage, which has been released by the police department or by the prosecutor's office or by whatever agency, is not only showing the body cam footage of the officer who discharged his firearm, but the officer that's arriving on scene, what we're seeing, is only being shown what happened after the commands were given. I'll show you what I mean. So the police officer gets there. When he's getting out of his car, 8 seconds have already elapsed since that happened. We can see the suspect up in the upper part of the frame there, and now shots are fired. So this body cam footage that was put out only shows the officer rolling out of his car after that verbal command was given. So we have some agency or some police department that released this, and I would say with some lack of good faith, showing a police officer rolling out of a car, and it doesn't even show the part where that other police officer had issued that command. Case in point, I'll roll it back just so you could see it. But when the footage begins, it starts at 3 or 4 seconds, and that's reverse engineered from when the shots are first fired, the sound of the shots, 13 seconds in the past. Those 13 seconds go back to before this body cam footage even started. So that's a serious problem. Drew, what are your takes on that?
It's a very serious problem. It's definitely going to sway anybody watching it or seeing it, and it's definitely relevant. Now, I don't know what he heard. I don't know if he actually heard the commands of drop the gun, but I was thinking, even when you were talking about the description, as a police officer, you're called to respond to a place where a person may be armed, and you get there and you're confronted with somebody who is armed. So the description almost is off the table. It's almost the opposite of or it almost supports the comments of the dumb comments that are usually made on YouTube of, it's the guy with the gun, dummy. Well, this is what we're talking about. It's not always the guy with the gun. The guy with the gun might be the homeowner who was dumb enough to come outside, or, God rest his soul, was not wise enough to leave his gun in there. Now, think about why would you call the police if you're going to walk outside with your gun to protect your property? Why did you even call the police if that were the case? But yes, I think that this footage is a little misleading and dishonest in the sense that there was a lot of time that was elapsed between arrival and shots being fired. Also, I think what should lend to any of this, which should go into any community briefing, is that whoever shot, was it the same guy that shot that ran and got the red rescue bag and all that? Was it the same guy? Or
yeah,
no?
It was the guy who was saying that he was. So are you saying that it is the person in this car that's shooting? If it was the same, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that it was. I think it was a person off the camera to the right that was saying something about he had a gun, he was going to shoot me. And this guy that we're seeing the vantage point, he's the one that grabs the med bag. Generally, you would not have the officer discharge the firearm rendering aid. Is that correct, Drew?
Well, I don't. I think that's
I could replay it if you like.
That's a coin toss. I do think that you're probably going to be in some kind of altered state because of the gunfire. But if anything, like, if the state is trying to prove on behalf of the people that this is some type of murder or manslaughter, why would they be working so hard to save the person? It's not. It's like, oh, I just wanted to shoot him because I felt like shooting him, and therefore I needed to save him. This is like, no, there was a guy that was holding a gun, and I thought he was going to shoot me. So instead of allowing him to shoot me first, I shot him, and now I'm going to save him. And then, seconds later or a minute later, I find out this is the guy that called 911. How am I, how am I supposed to know that? Like, I do understand descriptions and all that, but again, what in your right mind would tell you, okay, I'm going to call the professionals with guns to confront this armed suspect. I'm telling the armed professionals that the guy is armed, and I'm going to go out there and add a gun to this whole thing. It's foolish. It's kind of like it's like walking with a lit torch into a gas station, saying, "Hey, there's about to be a fire out there." Like it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense.
It surely doesn't. And just to call your attention back to the screen, look, we could see that this body cam footage, which was the only one that was released, the officer is still looking at his steering wheel. And again, I reverse engineered the timing of it so that the call to put down the firearm was 13 plus seconds prior to when the gunshots happened. So when you hear the gunshots on the body cam, I essentially ran the clock back the same amount of time. What that means is this officer that we're looking at is looking at his steering wheel. 4 seconds prior to this is when the command was given to put down the weapon. So what was released to the public was this officer getting out and just seeing this guy blown away. And as we get to the Facebook, or excuse me, the YouTube comments on it, we're going to see what 2021 attitudes and civilians and public opinion was on a hit like this. And so what I have to say is, whatever agency compelled them to put this out, why did they release it in this fashion? Why did they put out this one video that shows the police seemingly behaving in an over-aggressive, reckless manner? Because it's very, very inflammatory. It almost seems to me like this video was put out in order to make the police look very, very bad. They're showing a vantage point that's not the vantage point of the shooter, and it's been edited so that you don't see when the call was given what exactly happened. So even though we just broke it down, we went frame by frame, the body cam footage that was released, I can't see whether the man has a gun in his hand or not. All I know is that the officer told him to put down the gun. 13 seconds of decision making went by, and then shots were opened, fired. Drew, are you ready to take on the YouTube comments? Before I do that, I want to read a specific YouTube comment to you. That's not really for you to comment on, but it's something that adds some interesting color to it. And I can't verify this because this is people on the internet. But at 1997, Monchi, I don't know what that means, but Monchi, he says the victim on this case, or the caller, his name was Sharp, and he was a veteran, according to what this YouTube commenter is saying. His name was Charles Sharp III, and that he was a veteran. So we're talking about a veteran, well liked in the neighborhood, a member of the 177th Fighter Wing during more than 21 years of service with the Air Force. He had a service at the Smith Funeral Home in Mantua, and burial with military honors in Gloucester County. Interesting to know. So why are we talking about a man who spent his entire 21 years in the armed forces, who apparently has no idea how to use a firearm, when that would be a good idea, when that would be a bad idea? Or doesn't it just add a layer of just confusion?
Yeah.
That this guy could be a veteran?
General rules of engagement, even like rules, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I'll go ahead and throw up some YouTube comments if you're ready. What does the internet think? F Your Cold says, when the cops start quickly verbalizing justification for what they did, it's usually not a good sign. Drew, what's your take on that?
We don't verbalize justification. We verbalize commands for you to follow. This isn't about justification. If it were about justification, it would be like, hey, don't point that firearm at me. That's justifying it. If you're saying drop the gun, you're literally telling them drop the gun. People are programmed to believe also that these commands are optional and that it's a justification just for the video, just for the gram. We're just saying drop the gun for the gram or for the body cam or whatever. bullshit. Long before body cam existed, long before people stood out there with their stupid cell phones and recorded everything we did because it was their constitutional right, all that other bullshit, we said the same thing. Drop your gun, drop your firearm, drop your weapon, drop your gun. This is not a justification of what they're about to do. This is about prevention for not having to do what they're about to do.
I think what the commenter means is that when they were gloving up and getting ready to perform first aid, he's like, "Yeah, he was going to shoot me." You know, I think
I see.
I think that it wasn't necessarily that they were getting their story straight, but that he was almost that he felt guilty about it, or he was trying to immediately rationalize.
Okay.
But he also could just be saying what happened. You know, we didn't see either way on that video. This commenter says like, "Oh yeah, he's just saying, you know, he's trying to rationalize or you know, this is a bad sign that he's trying to like justify himself." Again, nothing that we saw on that footage, nothing that F your Colt said, nothing that F your Colt saw indicates either way, because the way that this footage has been released completely obscures the truth of what's happening. And yet this guy has an opinion on it. So it's just interesting that he feels like part of the incriminating evidence of this video was the officer justifying himself or rationalizing what just happened.
Okay, no so I would say F your Colt or whatever this fucking user is. Let me ask you a simple question. The guy is the guy is it's called an excited utterance, a spontaneous statement of some sort. And the cop is saying, like, he's telling you what is on his mind at that moment. Like, man, he was pointing the gun at me. So if you think that that's a justification and you think it's unfair to him to say that or to use that or whatever, what would your theory be, or what would your stance be if he said, "I got that son of a bitch"?
What would your stance be if he said nothing at all? Would you think he was like a stone cold killer? There's nothing that the officer can do or not do in this case that's not going to make him guilty in the eyes of somebody like you.
Right. In the heat of the moment. And by the way, like there is no one that's going to put themselves in the officer's shoes, because the officers have been vilified 6 ways to Sunday. What they're going to do is they will always put themselves in the victim's shoes, because they think that the police are always brutal to people.
The other thing is that the officer knows that, justified or not, he's going to have to go through a gauntlet trying to defend himself, prove himself right. And in the cases, I'll say it again, it's almost the point where you could take a shot now, but Ben Darby, you can be right, completely right, do nothing wrong, and still end up being cleared by your department. And then at a time of convenience, you can end up getting indicted, charged later. That happened recently also in California too, didn't it? Where we had some officers who were cleared on a use of force. And then we had a new DA come in and decided that they were...
yeah, I think it was like 2 years later.
Yeah. So that could happen at any time. So the officer knows that, right or wrong, he's going to have to be justifying himself from here on out, and probably for the rest of his life. Right. This guy says, should I even say what his call sign is? I'm going to call him Everyone's Nuts. Damn, he lit that dude up with no hesitation. Again, we had 13 seconds where we heard someone say, a police officer say, "Put the gun down." So no hesitation. And yet this guy saw the same video that you and I saw, said no hesitation, even though 13 seconds was in there.
Well, no hesitation is all it takes for the guy to light the officer up as well. So.
Yeah. This guy is Zavi Felk. I love how the cops nor dispatch communicated that he was on the phone with him or that had a pistol. Well, we knew dispatch was on the phone with him. The police knew that he was on the phone with him. We knew that because we asked him to verify how he knew the pistols. Drew, do you think it was the dispatch's fault for not ascertaining whether or not the caller was outside? That may be a legitimate question.
The dispatcher's fault? No, I don't know. Like I said before, I do believe that maybe something that could have been said, but again, this is all hindsight, is, hey, just stay in your house. You know, they're getting there. They're pretty close, or, you know, just stay protected or whatever. But at no point did he tell him, hey, why don't you go outside and meet the officers and do that with your gun in your hand? Because that's a great idea. I don't know that I can find fault in this.
Zach F748 says he just executed the guy. No commands. He just started blasting. The guy's gun wasn't pointed. Drew, I could see blood coming from out of your ears. Both of those comments are wrong. He says no commands, just start blasting. We heard it. We heard it play back. We just played the same video that Zach heard. We heard him say, put down the gun. So we know that there were commands. He didn't just start blasting. There was 13 seconds there. But again, people are taking a very casual and cursory glance at this video of seeing an officer stepping out of his car and a second officer firing his rounds well after those verbal commands were already given. So you hear it on the 911, but not on the body cam. And we still don't see the 911, or we don't see the body cam of the officer who actually pulled the trigger. And I think that any police department or district attorney's office who wants to inflame anti-police sentiment, or anyone that would want to do that, whether it was the media or whoever else, they can edit and put things out just like this, so that what we see is exactly what Zach's comments are. We see that, oh, police officer just rolled up on the scene and just started blasting. But the truth is, that's not what happened. And we analyzed the evidence that was in the same thing that Zach saw to find that nothing that Zach wrote was true.
This is why I think that a show like ours is important, or a show like, any of the other shows that explain police breakdowns. But it's for an audience that actually wants to listen. If you want to listen to the mainstream media, you're going to hear things, and you're going to automatically know, man, he just got out of his car and he executed him. You don't want to seek the truth. You just want to seek what you want to hear. It's confirmation bias. So, I don't even know that is, I don't even know that's on the table. Like,
it's intellectually dishonest.
Yeah,
the chubby kid says, he pointed at me. No, he didn't. Well, first of all, we didn't see whether or not he pointed it or not. But you mentioned Graham v. Connor earlier. We know that the beat of the weapon does not have to be trained on the officer first. People have this idea that it has to be a showdown, right? Someone literally has to raise their gun and pull it up, and now you're justified. Now you can draw. Now it's a cowboy movie. Go ahead and reach so that I can blast you. It doesn't have to be that way. If someone's walking around, if they have a gun in their hand, if they're given a command to throw it down and they don't, at that point, Drew, I mean, the reasonableness, the objective reasonableness of an officer, what do? You don't wait to take a round. You don't wait to be shot at. So many people will get in these comments. This is something I've seen so often, Drew, in recent officer-involved shootings, because this guy didn't even point it at him. Folks, why do you have to have a gun pointed at you before you defend yourself? You certainly would not hold yourself to that same standard. If there was a threatening person in your yard and he had a gun, you would not wait for him to pull it up and cock back the hammer like that. You are not going to wait for that. You will go ahead and you will take him out first. Survivors go ahead and they get their retaliation in first, and that's how they continue to survive. And a police officer is not going to wait until the last split second to save himself or someone else.
These are the same people that say they need more training, right? And, you know what I mean? And okay, so we need more training to get us to allow people time to shoot us. No, we don't need more training. We're good with that. This is, and I'll tell you right now, the chubby kid, if that were to show up on the stand, like, even if they put the officer on the stand and they played that body cam and they said, did you not say here that he pointed this at you? He's going to say, yeah, but what would you do in that situation? Like the memory is very funny when it comes to traumatic situations. And we always say, well, it's in the fog, like, he never heard the officer say, drop the gun. And that's okay for the citizen. But when a cop has this little moment of, well, his brain is replaying that he pointed the gun at him. Clearly the guy had a gun. That's all you need. It's like this two-way street doesn't balance. It's not a two-way street. It's a one-way street.
We'll keep going. This guy, MS393, it says, pretty dumb to have your gun out when the cops arrive, but also no need for the cop to mag dump the guy as soon as he pulled up. Well, thank you for having the intelligence to say that it was stupid of the guy to be out front with a gun, but we know that the cop did not just mag dump as soon as he showed up. Johnny Veritas says, I love how bored the 911 operator sounds at the beginning, almost like, welcome to McDonald's. What can I get for you? This is the comment I almost responded to. What's the right way to do it? No matter how we answer the phone, we sound like we're rude. We sound like we don't care. We sound like we're bored. We sound like we're asleep. Everyone that doesn't answer 911 seems to have a different opinion about how I should answer 911 in the most professional and appropriate way. If I don't do it the way that you think I should, then I'm obviously wrong. or I'm just hilarious. And I get it. Like the guy sounded a little upbeat or something, but maybe something good just happened to him. And you know what? 911s are an emergency for the people calling them, but 911 is just our bread and butter. It's everything. It's something that we're doing like every couple of minutes in a busy shift. So why are we going to be worked up about it one way or the other? 911 doesn't ring and we're like, oh my God, what the hell is happening? We're doing what you do at your job every day, all the time. When 911 rings, it's generally not a big deal to us. Now we'll be locked in, we'll be engaged, we'll be professional. But so what if we sound like we're having a good time when we answer the phone initially?
Nothing struck me about how either of them answered those 911 calls. There were two, there was a transfer in there somewhere or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Nothing struck me about that. That's how 100% of the 911 calls are answered. All of this information, is because of hindsight.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you call 911, do you want somebody completely out of their mind and like 911, what's your emergency? Like it's probably better to hear somebody with a calm voice saying 911, what's your emergency?
Or
McDonald's.
Or friendly. Why not? I mean, that's just good service. Here we have SMC Gilly 34. I'm sorry. The screen's very far away from me, but it says, hard to say, but that looks like a bad shooting. No commands, just started blasting. Not an easy job. I normally side with the cops, but that looks bad. He's right. It looks bad, but we're not being fed the truth. We're being fed something that is subjective because we're not seeing even the objective point of view of the officer that pulled the trigger. And what we saw was edited so that when the officer gets out of the car, the commands had already been given. So the only vantage point that we're allowed to see in this call is from when things have already started and when it's too late to get that proper perspective.
So these are two. First of all, there was 2 comments ago. There was a guy that talked about mag dump. So these are internet terms that come about for people that watch these constantly. And sometimes it's from people that watch cop videos constantly. So like the term mag dump and blah, blah, blah. This is like you for a living watch cop videos. I for a living am a cop. So if you want to take your word for it or you want to believe what you want to believe, go for it. I've been in the shoes. I've had the gun pointed at me. 1. And then 2, this other guy, SMC Gilly, I'll bet he's rational enough to hear the other side of the story. He's saying, I normally side with the cops and blah, 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 but this looks bad. Well, yeah, what you're seeing looks bad, but not that you're not seeing the total picture. You're seeing a 3 or 4 minute video. I mean, it's not that there was no commands that just started blasting. We just debunked that. And luckily the jury is not going to just see that. They're going to see the whole story. So
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, but that's what a good defense attorney.
You're kind of jumping to conclusions there, Drew, and I'm curious about that. This one comes from Judge Lazar, who's, by the way, his little profile picture is of Judge Dredd's badge. This is one where I think more than just firing the cop is called for. There was absolutely no justifiable reason for him to jump out and just mag dump the guy without a word. Dude arms, and he goes on and on and on and on. Again, Judge, the guy that jumped out of the car is not the guy that is not the same guy that shot him. You could see that he doesn't draw his pistol or point it at the guy. He gets out of the car and sees a second officer doing it. But again, your casual, cursory glance at this video you don't even compute that the video that you're seeing is not the person who pulled the trigger. And you didn't listen to the 911. I bet they skipped right over the 911 call, Drew, because that's the boring part, where we heard someone say, drop the gun, and then 13 seconds of consideration time elapsed. Here's one that's critical, Drew. This one is from some guy. It says, I was a dispatcher. The first thing I told armed callers to do was secure the weapon before my officers arrived. And my officers have a description and all of the armed homeowner and info about the armed homeowner and suspects before they got there. This was on the cops and dispatch. So here we have a dispatcher throwing both overboard. What do you say to that dispatcher?
Zero credibility. I mean, listen, I get what you're saying. Yes, you were a dispatcher, but you're also saying the first thing I did was tell people to put their gun away before the cop even arrived, which I just said a couple minutes ago I had an issue with. One, that's not necessarily, that may seem like the right thing to do, and it may seem like the logical thing to do, as I've discussed, because of officer safety and all that. And I agree that they should have a description of all involved, and especially armed homeowners. But you in hindsight, you're taking all of this in hindsight. You're not taking into account what this dispatcher did. Again, you should know as a dispatcher the split ear concept. You should know that you can give a million descriptions, but it doesn't matter once they get there and the guy's pointing a gun at them. It's not on the cop and it's not on the dispatcher. It's kind of on the homeowner here. And yes, but there is a quarter stake in all of this. For there's enough blame for everybody, but why are we searching for blame constantly? Like
that's a good point. This does harken back to Sparks, Nevada, where the guy with the chainsaw, no one wanted to give or get a description on the guy with the chainsaw because we just assumed it was him. Here we go. Here's someone with a gun that shouldn't have been shot because we were looking for 2 or 3 other people. But Drew, you came to the exact same conclusion that I came to. We have a bias. Our whole culture has a bias that when we see a video, when a video drops on police activity or Comm Center or police.law.news or whatever, the first thing is, let's analyze the cops. So did the cops do this right? Did the cops do this wrong? What is the policy? What is the law? What is objectively reasonable? What were the things that clouded the issue? Why don't we talk about the fact that, to employ a Drewism, an exigency was created by a man being outside with a gun and then summoning police to his location. Now, I understand a felony was in progress. The police are there to deal with that felony, but he did create the problem. Okay. He did stand outside with a firearm. Is he confronting these people or is he having the police do it? You should know that the police are not there to team up with you, that they're not going to give you the cool hand signals where you're going to go clear that side of the building while they go around the other. That's not how it's going to be. If you're calling armed police officers to the scene, you get out of that situation. It's you or them, not you and them. And someone who's a veteran of the Air Force, someone that was probably proficient in firearms, I'm sure you have to be, and proficient in some sort of tactics. I mean, I guess I don't know if the guy was literally an officer and all he did was jump in a plane and fly away and these things never computed to him. But you should have some sort of idea, like you said, rules of engagement, and these sort of things are just going to wind up in tragedy. Also, just not knowing how you can use a gun. I mentioned New Jersey earlier and their crazy laws. They create confounding situations. And this is the last one, Drew. This is the guy that takes you on. He says, David Nainer, I think I'm reading his name right, as a retired officer who taught tactical firearms, I can tell you this officer reacted way too quickly in discharging his firearm. No notice to suspect to drop his weapon given, and no immediate threat to the officer. I'm sure this officers have been at the very least placed on administrative leave, and now I hear the DA has the case. The officers will be damn lucky if he's not charged. Drew, you just took on the dispatcher. Now take on the cop.
I think that this is the product of the conditioning that media and social media, that mainstream media and social media has put on us as law enforcement officers to respond to the social pressures of everybody saying that we're just brutal. And this cop, like so many other cops in this country, that some of them even have YouTube channels, will do. And they want to find the example where we were in the wrong so they can say, look at me, I'm a cop, and I'm telling you we were in the wrong here. And this is not the example. This is not true.
They feel like by eating their own, they get an extra step of credibility, which then they can use to feel, you can use to feel better for your likes or your subscribes, or just in case. This guy didn't have to mention that he was a retired officer who taught tactical firearms. He could have just said, I'm a cop and this looks bad to me. But he went into great detail there to build up his credibility as someone who would know. And then he's very quick to throw them overboard. I've said it before too. Police are way too quick to throw each other overboard. Look at what was released, the press package that was released by this agency, everything that's going on. That already looks bad enough. We already know the public sentiment, particularly in 2021, is going to be geared against police officers. David, why are you out there putting yourself there saying, instead of saying like, this looks bad to me as a cop, why don't you just say nothing at all? If you really are a police officer, professional courtesy might mean, this guy's going through my worst nightmare, the thing that I had hoped had never happened to me. And I'm guessing it didn't, David, if you're just on YouTube commenting about it. Maybe you owe the guy a little bit of respect, which would mean maybe just your silence. But you don't have any respect for police officers. You don't have any respect for the thin blue line that the liberals and the critics all say that we're all hiding behind and binding ourselves together with. You just eat other police officers, and you do it to make yourself look good in a YouTube comment section and to make yourself feel better. And regardless of whether or not it was justified or not justified, you exploited the situation for some kind of adulation on YouTube. And I'm not sure what the reason was for that. And you could say, well, you're guilty of doing the same thing. I'm showing your side of it, and I'm saying my side of it. At least I'm having everyone's side be said. Drew, any other final comments on that?
Yep, I'm going to go on a rant. So hit the
go
button.
On a rant.
David Meyer, 238. First of all, thank you for your service. I respect your opinion. I disagree with it. I am a retired officer who taught tactical firearms as well. I'm sorry. I'm a retired officer who taught firearms and tactical movements in active shooter. I taught active shooter. I've been through tactical firearms courses where I was the student. So I want to be very clear about where I'm coming from on this. And I can tell you as an instructor that I'm going to use this body camera as a teaching tool of what could happen, not this is how it should have happened, because that's what instructors do. I would never get in front of a classroom full of people and say, this was a bad shoot. Don't ever do this. This was bad. You can't do this because he didn't say X, Y, and Z. Even in our policy where I work, it said a warning when feasible. You're supposed to give a warning when feasible. There's a when feasible. There's a condition on that. Okay, so there's that. Secondly, what the public has clamored for is the ability to see everything that we do and we say on body cam. And once they got access to everything that we say and we do on body cam, they now think they have the right to break down everything that we said and we did on the same body cam. So it wasn't good enough that they got the access to the body cam to see, oh, well, maybe they're not lying about this whole thing. It is now, well, we're going to break down every single momentary second in that video and tell you how you're wrong. Third, when a guy like Officer Meyer here, David Meyer, 238 on YouTube, and again, thank you for your service, jumps all over and jumps on the side of everybody else. This is John. Here's a keyword for you. This is exactly what I said, and I still to this day stand on about Uvalde. I do not agree with targeting those officers, calling them cowards, and saying, look at me, I'm a multi-year officer, and those guys are cowards, and you're an idiot if you think not. Just like the Acorn guy and the idiot who owns the idiot YouTube channel in Columbus, calling me out. Right. Because he's like, I've got to jump on the bandwagon and call this Acorn guy an idiot because I need likes and shares and views and clicks. Okay, here's what's happened since. And this is what I was saying exactly in that moment with Uvalde. Once you open this door, I don't have to be a cop and I don't have to agree with everything the cops do. There are a lot of things that they do that cops do that I disagree with. I just don't think that publicly shaming cops as an opportunity without knowing the full story is a good idea. It's not bold by any stretch. It's cowardly if you ask me. So these guys in Uvalde, whatever happened there, and I can do a full breakdown, as you know, John, on what my to support what I'm saying about that. What we have seen in the past couple of weeks is protests around the United States for Palestine, for free Palestine on university campuses. And in one particular campus in Texas, the Free Palestine people are yelling, "You failed at Uvalde, you failed at Uvalde." This is childish bullshit, first of all.
Well, again, intellectually dishonest. But what do we expect from people who are supporting Hamas, Drew? You can't expect better of them.
But it also gave me pause, and it made me say to myself, because I really wanted to get on the internet and say it, but I don't know where to do it or how other than this. I fucking told you this would happen. I told you, you didn't have to agree with what they did, but when you go on the offensive and disagree and tell everybody that they were fucking cowards without knowing all of your fucking facts, which 90% of the people, even cops that comment on that Uvalde shit, don't know. This is what you created. You opened the fucking door, Ben, the fucking cop, or whatever your name is, to people saying, you know what? Even the cops say that they're wrong. Even the cops say that they're stupid. Well, some cops are fucking stupid. And they're the ones that are saying things like, those guys are cowards. They didn't know what they were doing. You look at the whole thing in totality. If you look at all of the facts, you don't have to justify bad behavior, but you certainly should put yourself in the person's shoes. And it's the same thing with you. It's small as David Meyer 238. Put yourself in that officer's shoes, because I guarantee if you were ever in an officer-involved shooting, you probably wouldn't be commenting on that. And if you were, thank God you're alive. But I think it's dumb to say that there is no reason for them to shoot, that it was a bad shooting. That's stupid. No notice to a suspect is a stupid motive. No, waiting for someone to point a gun at you. Why do you even have a gun? What do you need a gun for? It's dumb. So listen, all you cops out there that are vanity fucking, like, I need likes and shares and I need to jump on. I'm looking for the moment to say we are wrong, just so everybody can see just so everybody can see how virtuous I am. Yeah, I'm full auto, damn it, John. But just so everybody can see how virtuous I am and how we are wrong. And fuck yeah, we're wrong. We're wrong on a lot of stuff. You don't need to go on a microphone and start fucking ranting and raving about how wrong they are. You can actually point out and say, well, listen, they are wrong and this is why. You don't have to fucking cast blame like everybody else. And you definitely don't need to pile on, which is a term that I've used a million times when discussing the Acorn cop and the Uvalde guys. This is the worst moment in their lives. And I am holding off on publishing what I have about Uvalde, about my side of it, giving the officer side of it, so to speak, from my perspective, just an asshole looking for likes and shares, supposedly. I've been holding off on putting this out, but man, I'm getting closer and closer because people just do not understand the full story on that, and they don't want to because there are kids involved. And I understand the emotion behind it. I have kids myself. I think every day I go in that car line and I pick up my stepdaughter from high school. I think every day about how horrible, what a bad situation it would be for someone to walk in that school with a gun. But it's a reality. And I am not going to judge the cops that are out there doing it, especially when they're given bad information. These are the same people that don't believe the media for anything and believe the media is out to get them and media this and the mainstream media that. But the minute it goes into their favor, they're like, yeah, you know what? The mainstream media is right on this one. You're fucking dumb.
I boiled Drew's blood. I win. I don't know if this was a game show this whole time.
Way to go. You
boiled my blood. No, at the risk of patting myself on the back, which I risk all the time, I think that was a success, Drew, because something that we have been challenged on here is that we are often in an echo chamber, even though we try to invite discourse without discord. We've had people on the show before. Oh, my light just burned out. We've had people on the show before that we don't necessarily agree with. But I think that having people have their say and get to have their comments and have you respond to them was a great way to activate you and a great way to ruin the rest of your day, which if this podcast does nothing else, it should do that. Drew, you're pretty mad. We're making record time on this episode, 2 hours long. I figure you have nothing left to say to me.
I don't. You can always reach us at commcenterpodcast@gmail.com also. And look for thecommcenter.com coming very soon.
Oh, we're going to have a website. Very exciting. All right. Well, my water heater exploded. my sump pump turned on at one point during this episode, and my light burned out. So this may be my last episode, not through lack of will, but just because my physical infrastructure is crumbling. So I'm going to leave before something catches on fire. I think I smell gas. I'd better get going. On behalf of my own self and no one else.
Bye.